As the sun dipped below the jagged peaks, casting long shadows over the winding road, we felt a growing sense of unease. Rumors of the Phantom Mountain Pass, a place shrouded in mystery and fear, had reached us, but our curiosity drove us to explore its secrets. The air grew colder and the fog thicker, wrapping around our car like a shroud as we ventured deeper into the unknown. The atmosphere felt oppressive, almost as if the mountains themselves were warning us to turn back. We were a group of 4 friends: Jack, Lisa, Emily, and me, Tom. We had been on countless adventures together, but something about this trip felt different. The road was eerily quiet, the usual sounds of nature replaced by an unsettling silence. Our conversation had dwindled, replaced by nervous glances and tense smiles. Even Jack, our fearless leader, seemed on edge as he navigated the narrow, winding path. As night fell, the headlights of our car barely penetrated the thickening fog. Shadows danced on the periphery of our vision, creating the illusion of movement where there was none. We pressed on, driven by a mix of curiosity and stubbornness. The road seemed endless, a labyrinth of twists and turns with no clear destination. Every mile deepened our sense of isolation, as if we were the last people left in the world. Suddenly, the car's engine sputtered and died, leaving us stranded in the middle of the path. Jack cursed under his breath and tried to restart the engine, but it was no use. We were stuck. The silence was deafening, broken only by the occasional rustle of leaves or the distant call of an unseen bird. We decided to leave the car and search for help, hoping to find a nearby town or a passing traveler. We grabbed our flashlights and set out on foot, the beams cutting through the dense fog. The cold air bit at our skin, making every breath visible. The forest surrounding the pass was dense and unwelcoming, its twisted branches reaching out like skeletal fingers. We walked in silence, the weight of our situation sinking in with every step. The path ahead was uncertain, and fear gnawed at the edges of our minds. After what felt like hours of walking, we came across an old, dilapidated church. Its stone walls were covered in ivy, and the wooden door hung loosely on its hinges. It looked abandoned, yet somehow it felt like a sanctuary amidst the desolation. We decided to seek refuge inside, hoping to find warmth and perhaps some clue about our location. The door creaked loudly as we pushed it open, echoing through the empty interior. Inside, the church was a stark contrast to the outside world. The air was warmer, and the faint scent of incense lingered in the air. Rows of wooden pews faced a simple altar, and stained glass windows cast colorful patterns on the stone floor. We settled into one of the pews, grateful for a moment of respite, but our relief was short-lived as we began to notice strange markings on the walls, symbols that none of us could recognize. Lisa, always the inquisitive one, approached the altar to get a closer look. As she did, she noticed a small leather-bound book lying open. She picked it up and began to read aloud. The book told the tale of a tragedy that had befallen the pass many years ago. A group of settlers who had mysteriously vanished, their fate unknown. The more she read, the more we realized that their story bore an eerie resemblance to our own. A chill ran down my spine as I listened to Lisa's voice echo through the church. The book described how the settlers had been plagued by strange occurrences. Voices in the night, shadows that moved on their own, and an overwhelming sense of being watched. They had sought refuge in this very church, only to disappear without a trace. The realization that we might be following in their footsteps was terrifying. As Lisa closed the book, we heard a faint whispering sound, like distant voices carried on the wind. We exchanged nervous glances, each of us feeling the same dread. Jack suggested we leave the church and continue our search for help, but the thought of stepping back into the foggy night was daunting. Nevertheless, we knew we couldn't stay there forever. We gathered our belongings and steeled ourselves for the journey ahead. Stepping outside, the fog seemed thicker than before, and the cold was even more biting. We followed a narrow path that led away from the church, hoping it would take us to safety. The whispering grew louder, more distinct, but we couldn't make out the words. It felt as if unseen eyes were watching our every move, and the sense of being followed was overwhelming. Our flashlights flickered, casting erratic shadows that played tricks on our minds. The path led us deeper into the forest, the trees closing in around us like a cage. The whispering voices became clearer, and we could make out fragments of sentences, pleas for help, cries of anguish, and eerie laughter. Fear gripped us, and we quickened our pace, driven by the primal urge to escape. Emily stumbled and fell, her flashlight clattering to the ground. As I helped her up, I caught a glimpse of something moving in the darkness. A figure stood just beyond the reach of our lights, barely visible through the fog. It was tall and gaunt, its features obscured. I felt a cold dread wash over me as I realized it was watching us. I urged the others to hurry, and we broke into a run, the sense of urgency driving us forward. The figure didn't follow, but its presence lingered in our minds, a constant reminder of the danger we were in. We ran until our lungs burned and our legs ached, finally coming to a clearing. In the center stood an old weathered cabin. It looked abandoned, but we had no other options. We approached cautiously, the door creaking as we pushed it open. Inside, the cabin was dusty and filled with old, decaying furniture. It was clear no one had lived there for a long time, but it offered a temporary refuge from the relentless fog. We collapsed onto the floor, exhausted and frightened. Jack searched the cabin for anything useful, while the rest of us tried to catch our breath. The whispering voices had faded, replaced by the creaking of the cabin and the distant howling of the wind. We huddled together, seeking comfort in each other's presence. The night felt endless, and every minute was a battle against our growing fear. Jack returned with a map he had found in a drawer. It was old and tattered, but it showed the layout of the pass and the surrounding area. We studied it intently, trying to find a way out. The map indicated a small town just beyond the forest, a beacon of hope in our dire situation. We decided to rest for a few hours and set out at first light, praying that the fog would lift and reveal a clear path. Sleep came fitfully, haunted by nightmares of the figure in the fog and the whispers in the church. I woke several times, heart pounding, convinced I had heard someone or something moving outside the cabin. Each time I reassured myself it was just the wind, but the unease lingered. When dawn finally broke, the first light of day brought a fragile sense of relief. We gathered our belongings and prepared to leave. As we stepped outside, the fog had lifted slightly, allowing us to see further down the path. We followed the map, our spirits lifted by the hope of finding the town. The forest was still dense and foreboding, but the daylight made it seem less menacing. We walked in silence, each of us lost in our thoughts, the events of the previous night weighing heavily on our minds. The path wound through the forest, the terrain growing rougher with each step. We came across remnants of the past rusted tools, decaying carts, and old forgotten graves. It was a stark reminder of the settlers who had once traveled this way. their fate forever tied to the phantom mountain pass. As we moved forward, the sense of being watched returned, more intense than before. The whispering voices resumed, louder and more insistent. They seemed to come from all directions, making it impossible to pinpoint their source. We tried to ignore them, focusing on the path ahead, but it was difficult. The air grew colder, and a feeling of dread settled over us. It was as if the forest itself was alive, conspiring to keep us from reaching our destination. We pushed on, determined to escape the pass. The map indicated a river ahead, which would lead us to the town. As we approached the river, we saw a rickety wooden bridge spanning the rushing water. It looked old and unstable, but it was our only option. Jack went first, testing each step carefully. The bridge creaked and swayed, but it held. One by one, we crossed the bridge, our hearts pounding with each step. The river roared below us, a reminder of the peril we faced. As I reached the other side, I felt a sense of relief, but it was short-lived. The whispering voices grew louder, almost frantic. It was as if they were warning us, but of what, we couldn't tell. We hurried along the path, eager to leave the forest behind. The path led us to a clearing, where we found the remains of an old settlement. Broken cabins and crumbling walls stood as silent witnesses to the past. We explored cautiously, hoping to find some clue about what had happened here. The air was heavy with the weight of history, and the whispering voices seemed to emanate from the very ground we walked on. In the center of the settlement, we found a large, circular stone with strange symbols carved into its surface. It seemed to be the source of the voices, an ancient artifact that held the secrets of the past. As we examined it, the symbols began to glow faintly, and the whispering grew louder, more urgent. We realized we had uncovered something powerful, something that should have remained hidden. Emily suggested we leave immediately, but Jack was determined to understand the artifact's significance. He believed it held the key to our escape, a way to break the curse of the pass. Reluctantly, we agreed to stay and help him decipher the symbols. As we worked, the fog began to roll in again, thicker than before, enveloping the settlement in an impenetrable veil. The symbols on the stone told a story of betrayal and vengeance, a dark chapter in the history of the pass. The settlers had disturbed an ancient burial ground, angering the spirits that dwelled there. In their desperation, they had sought to appease the spirits with offerings, but it had only made things worse. The spirits had cursed the pass, trapping the souls of the settlers and anyone else who ventured too far. As we pieced together the story, the whispering voices became clearer, and we could hear the anguish and sorrow in their words. They were trapped, unable to find peace, their restless spirits bound to the past. We realized that our only hope of escape was to find a way to lift the curse, to set the spirits free. It was a daunting task, but we had no other choice. We searched the settlement for anything that might help us, finding old tools, scraps of clothing, and faded photographs. Each item told a piece of the settlers' story, adding to the weight of their tragic fate. As we gathered these remnants, we felt a growing connection to the spirits, a sense of empathy for their suffering. We knew we had to help them find peace, no matter the cost. With the artifacts in hand, we returned to the stone, hoping to perform a ritual that would lift the curse. The symbols glowed brighter as we arranged the items around the stone, and the whispering voice grew more intense. We followed the instructions we had deciphered, chanting the ancient words and making offerings of the settlers' belongings. The air crackled with energy, and the ground trembled beneath our feet. As we completed the ritual, the fog lifted suddenly, revealing the path ahead. The whispering voices fell silent, replaced by a profound stillness. We felt a sense of release, as if a great weight had been lifted from our shoulders. The spirits had found peace, and the curse of the past had been broken. We knew it was time to leave, to return to the world we had left behind. We made our way back through the forest, the path now clear and unobstructed. The sun broke through the clouds, casting a warm light on the land. It felt like a new beginning, a fresh start after the horrors we had faced. We walked in silence, each of us lost in our thoughts, processing the events of the past night. The sense of being watched had vanished, replaced by a peaceful calm. As we approached the edge of the forest, we saw the outlines of the town in the distance. Our hearts lifted at the sight of civilization, of safety and warmth. We quickened our pace, eager to leave the past behind. The journey had changed us, leaving us with a deep respect for the power of the unknown and a solemn vow to never take such risks again. We entered the town, drawing curious looks from the residents. We must have looked a sight tired, dirty, and haunted by our experiences. We found a small inn and checked in, grateful for a chance to rest and recover. The innkeeper, an elderly woman with kind eyes, listened to our story with a mixture of disbelief and sympathy. She told us that the past had always been a place of mystery, and many had tried to uncover its secrets, but none had succeeded. We spent the next few days in the town, regaining our strength and trying to come to terms with what had happened. The memories of the past lingered, haunting our dreams and our waking thoughts. We talked about it endlessly, each of us trying to make sense of the experience. We realized that we had been given a rare glimpse into a world beyond our own. A world where the past and present intertwined in ways we could scarcely comprehend. As the days passed, we began to feel a sense of closure. The town had a calming effect on us, its quiet streets and friendly residents offering a stark contrast to the terror of the past. We knew we had been through something extraordinary, something that would stay with us forever. But we also knew that we had survived, that we had faced our fears and come out the other side stronger. On our last day in the town, we visited a small cemetery on the outskirts. We found a grave marked with the names of the settlers, a poignant reminder of their tragic fate. We left flowers and said a silent prayer, hoping that they had found the peace they deserved. It felt like a fitting end to our journey, a final act of respect for those who had come before us. As we drove away from the town, the memories of the past began to fade, replaced by a sense of relief and gratitude. We had faced the unknown and survived, and now it was time to move forward. We talked about our next adventure, but we all agreed that it would be something less dangerous, something that wouldn't tempt fate. The Phantom Mountain Pass had taught us the value of caution, and we intended to heed its lesson. With each mile, the weight of the past lifted, and the future seemed brighter. We knew we would never forget what we had experienced, but we also knew that we had the strength to overcome anything. The bonds between us had grown stronger, forged in the crucible of fear and survival. We were more than friends now. We were a family, bound together by our shared ordeal. As we drove into the horizon, the mountains behind us, we felt a sense of closure. The whispers of the past were gone, replaced by the hum of the road and the laughter of our renewed spirits. We had faced the darkness and emerged into the light, forever changed but not defeated. The Phantom Mountain Pass would remain a part of our story, a chapter in our lives that we would never forget. With the first light of dawn breaking through the oppressive fog, we emerged from the ruins of the church, battered but alive. We had faced the tormented spirits and unearthed the grim truth of the phantom mountain pass. As we drove away, the haunting whispers of the past faded into silence, leaving us forever marked by the horrors we had survived and a vow never to return. The road stretched out before us, a promise of new adventures and a testament to the resilience of the human spirit.